Welcome to Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee, a conversation, and cultivate our relationships with one another in Christ. Beyond Sunday is a podcast ministry of Kindred Church, broadcasting to you from beautiful Orange County, California. And now, here's your host, Tom Grossi.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee and a conversation. My name is Tom Grossi. I'm the minister of music here at Kindred and the host of the Beyond Sunday podcast. And it's my great privilege to have our guest with us today here on Beyond Sunday. And when I think of Ryan, I think of this quote by American author, writer, and lecturer Dale Carnegie, who once said, "People rarely succeed unless they have fun in what they are doing." Or as we read in the book of Proverbs, "A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." So when I think of Ryan Voeltner, I think of a guy who definitely has brought some joy and some fun to us. Your sense of humor has been something that's been greatly appreciated in our technical ministries. And as we had in a guest with just recently on Beyond Sunday, I like to open up Beyond Sunday as we kind of end our first season here of not just the people on the platform, but people behind the scenes. Because so many people may not even know those that are on the platform that well, and this podcast has helped to acquaint them. But they certainly don't know a lot of people that are moving all the levers and knobs and making sure that we can be heard and we can be seen. And so I wanted to involve a couple members of our technical crew. So Ryan, it is great having you on the podcast, man.
Glad to be here. Most of the time we try to hide behind the camera.
Yeah, that's true. But you and I have something that the other guests don't, and that is we have a built-in white balance, right?
Yep.
So if we need to white balance the cameras, we just do this. Good to go, right?
Yep.
Easy. Well, hey, Ryan, it's a joy to have you again on the podcast. And just tell us, everybody knows that your last name is Voeltner, and that sounds like a very familiar name at Kindred, as Chris, that has been really instrumental in this podcast, and our creative director is your brother. But tell us a little bit about your family and any dirt that you got on your brother.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's always kind of funny because it's like growing up, it was always like, "Oh, I'm Ryan. This is my brother Christopher."
Yeah.
You know, you always introduce your other brother, but obviously Christopher's been here longer and more involved, so it's been kind of the reverse. Where it's like, "Hi, I'm Chris. This is my brother Ryan." So it's kind of funny, how you get that change. It's like with my older brother. You know, when everyone always asks, "Oh, are you oldest, youngest?" You know, you always get that when you're three brothers. And like with my older brother for the longest time, when we would always be together, they'd be like, "Oh, are you the oldest?" Because they would always think I'm the oldest because I'm the biggest in size and the hairiest and everything like that. And for the longest time, it always annoyed my older brother. He's like, "No, I'm the oldest one." And so it's just kind of one of those funny things of the whole stair step of the brothers. So
yeah.
But yeah, now it's kind of the reverse thing that it's like, obviously everybody in tech knows me, but then the people that I don't know, they're like, "Oh, hey, Chris," and he's like, "Oh, have you met my brother?"
Yeah.
It is like half the people that be like, "Oh, I don't remember," and it's like a lot of them I've run across or everything like that, but being behind the camera, you're just like, "Oh, you're the camera guy." I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
So 3 Voeltner boys, right?
Yep.
And Chris, of course, yourself, and then your other brother's name is?
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Yep.
Awesome. And your folks' names?
Christine and Dennis.
Wow. Now, how long have you guys been at Kindred?
I think I became a member in 2016 because I bought my home the end of December, and I became a member right before I bought my house. So.
And well, but both you and your brother have been a great joy to be able to work with and serve with, and you guys are really, really creative thinkers, and you have a lot of experience that we've been the beneficiary of in many ways, and I kind of wanted to get into a little bit of that, and then we'll get into some hobbies and some things that people might not know about you that are kind of some fun things, and that's kind of how we've been rolling on these podcasts. Sound good?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your technical experience, maybe for those of you who might not know. This is one of the guys that's back in the video room that is helping to produce the live stream, just about every camera angle that we're coming up with and all of that, and especially during COVID, Ryan's been a part of that, and he's been there many Sundays, and during COVID, you practically had a bunk bed in that room, and you stayed, it seemed, for every broadcast for several months. And so tell us a little bit maybe about kind of your technical background. I know you were serving at another church for a period of time.
Well, it's actually kind of funny with my technical background because by nature I'm actually an artist. And so, like, a lot of people, like, especially at my job and stuff, when they find out that I do tech support, they're kind of like, but you're an artist. Cause, like,
as in drawing.
Yeah, and so it's like the work I do at my job is tech support, and we look at lines of code. And so a lot of people don't bridge the left brain, right brain. And so everyone's like, kind of, what are you doing in the tech side? You're being an artist. And so it's kind of funny because it's like I've always been fascinated with tech, and I can kind of bridge that left brain, right brain. So I'm one of the good mediaries between the people that are right-brained and left-brained to kind of understand where that technical gap is. And so I think that's one of my strong suits. And so it's like, because, you know, if you talk to, like, an artistic person about something really technical, it just right over their head. And then if you're telling a really technical person about, like, artistic shots or something, they're like, but everything's in the shot. And you're like, but it doesn't look good. So I think that's one of my strong suits for technical-wise is because
you have an eye for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, all the guys in my family are all creative. Well, everybody on my side, because, like, my dad's a photographer, you know, Christopher's a photographer, and I'm an artist and stuff. Like, I did photography, too, but
do you design, I know Chris does, do you design websites as well, too? I've
done a couple for people. Like, I mostly do my own websites as opposed to, like, other people's. I mean, I've helped people and offered I could, but you know, he likes doing the websites more for people than me, whereas I like just kind of creating my own art. I mean, I've done more logos and stuff like that for people because, you know, I'm one of those people that I'm like, I kind of wish that money wasn't like the ultimate factors, because I had a couple friends that needed logo designs done, and what I did is they helped me do something like build a computer, and I helped them design a logo, and so there was no cash involved. It was just trading services, and I was like, I kind of wish that's how a lot of more things would be.
You know, it's interesting. My father's actually said something very similar to that. And my dad kind of barters as well on occasion, because my dad's got like tons of outdoor equipment and fishing equipment from his 15 sponsors that he had back in his bass tournament fishing days for 20 years while we were kids growing up. And so if so-and-so's got a golf club and my dad's got 3 fishing rods that they would love to have, there you go. And it's kind of a nice way to do business sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's like with a friend that I did the logo for him is like, you know, he needed it really bad, and he's like, I don't have any design since he just kind of had the concept, you know, and I just mocked something up for him in like a day or two, and he was just like blown away with it. And for me, it's like I probably worked a couple hours, and for me, it was no big deal. It's like, it's just something, but it was the world to him because it was just something he couldn't do.
Yeah.
And then he helped me like build my new computer for my art, and so I'm like, it's nice when you're using your skills like that, because it's a skill that you're familiar with or you use, and to you it's kind of it's no big deal, but to the other person it's a huge deal, and you figure it's like there was no money involved or anything. That was just a couple friends helping out and just trading services. And I was like,
awesome. When
I did that, I was like, man, I wish we could do that more often.
It's awesome. Well, in some ways you do that in a sense with us, that you give a great service to us, and you know, you're not compensated for what you do, but we are the beneficiary of your ministry with us in technology. And I know that there was a time when I think you and Chris both were serving at a different church, and then God brought you here and got you involved in technical ministries. When you guys got here, you kind of jumped in with both feet with tech pretty quickly. Were you not? I just remember seeing you back there a long time.
I think I was here for like 2 or 3 weeks as a member, and then I jumped right into it, and you know, we've been through all different kinds wrong, and I think it goes a lot with passion with what you do, because like when I think about video or photography like Christopher, you know, we see something, and if it's something we know we can do or we're passionate about, we look at ways that we can improve it as opposed to just get the job done.
Yeah. And you know what, maybe speak on that just a little bit, Ryan, because you really touched on something that I think is actually, I mean, we kind of flew by it in the conversation, but it's really good advice, and to kind of mine that out of this discussion, and that is, just because someone might have technical ability to work the switches and all that stuff, you have to have an eye or an ear, or both, as the case may be, to say, not is it just working, but is it being effective? Is it communicating? Can it be better? Good, better, best. And to always have that going through your mind. And in a sense, that skill set improved us as a technology team. And I kind of wanted to pivot on that a little bit to talking about COVID in our beloved 2020 year, where you enjoyed our breakfast burritos that we had when we were broadcasting, right?
Yep.
Each time we did that. But you were there faithful, and all of us rolled up our sleeves during that particular time in our church life when our entire congregation was at home and watching through technology. Tell us a little bit of how that was like for you, and some of the learning and developing and growing that you kind of observed kind of going through that time last year.
Well, one thing I always try to do when I'm in a bad situation or a bad outcome or something, try to look for the silver lining, because it's the only way it makes it any better. And like with COVID, obviously, it's like it was a shutdown, we weren't all meeting, but I think there was a lot of plus that came out of it. Like we got to refine a lot of stuff that we couldn't do with the full congregation. Like I think a lot of our streaming techniques got refined and shots and stuff like that. Like one of the things that I think was a real big improvement is one of our shots we had at the back. We actually moved it all the way up, and it gives you the clarity. So it's like when we're shooting even the pulpit shot, the shot is now just so much cleaner, and that became because obviously we moved it up during COVID and stuff like that. So I think if we didn't have the lockdowns or didn't meet, that's something that might have not ever came out of it. So I think that's definitely a blessing that came out of that. And I think, although it's like we weren't meeting, it gave us that opportunity to refine a lot of those kind of miscellaneous things that, you kind of just put on the back burner. You're like, yeah, we'll get to it or something like that. And it's like when nobody's actually physically there, it's like, okay, you have a whole lot more wiggle room to do stuff behind the camera. And I think that's one of the things, because, I had a couple people, like my mom and stuff like that watched the stream, and they were just telling us how good it looked during COVID. And obviously, I think some people, that's just one thing they don't think about, but when that was their only option, you had no other option.
Right, exactly. And when people are stuck on their devices as essentially their worship and church experience, I received during that time as well, too, so many people that were commenting, and I mean we're grateful for but in a sense I received some of those positive comments. I'm sure I received a few negative too, but I almost wish that I could have pushed some of those positive comments to our tech crew, and I tried to as much as possible, because in many ways, whatever myself or our worship team or Pastor Philip, whatever we did, it was perhaps the one time that I can think of in our brief church history together where almost all ministries were funneling through one department. And that was the technical department. In order to, whether it was Pastor Dan Naw that was delivering our midweek, whether it was our pastor sort of roundtable, or our Meet the Ministries, Meet the Spouses, our Sunday morning worship services. We went through Kindred Christmas as well as in Easter, basically being in broadcast mode. And that just takes a ton of planning and thinking, and you were real valuable to us, both in your experience and, again, your eye to kind of see some of that before it got to the masses, if you will. So I appreciated that about you. And now, I know you have a hobby of enjoying movies, right? So we were just talking off camera before the filming that the first movie that you'd seen in a while was just a couple weeks ago, and it had been how long it had been?
I think 2 years at least before lockdown. So yeah, we went to the movies last week, and it was kind of interesting because it's like, even though we were going to the movie, it was something, because it was my dad and I, we went to the drive-in movie, and it's something we would do during the summertime, great warm nights and everything. We would do it, several times throughout the summer. And we went out there and it again last week, and it's the same thing because, we go out there, we stop, pick up food, and then we go to the theater. And it just seemed kind of like a normal routine with us. But then when you kind of had that aha stop moment, you're like, it's been a really long time since we did that. And when we went there, we're just like, oh, yeah, it's something we always used to do. But then you had that kind of stop for a second. You're like, but we haven't done it in how long? And you're just sitting there trying to think back, and you're like, oh, since last year. And you're like, no, it was the year before. And so it was just so weird because it was like a normal thing you do all the time. And like when we were going there, I'm like, okay, what has changed? I mean, can you leave your car? Can you even go to the snack bar? What is it? Because it's like a lot of people sat in their cars, whereas normally people get out and put their lunchers. I mean, they still did it, but you figure more people were actually staying in their car than traditionally had done it, because obviously with COVID and everything like that. And it's kind of a shame because it's like, when you go to the drive-in, it's kind of like a flashback when people used to go to the drive-in, everybody's out there all hanging around, people throwing balls and stuff. And it's like, when we first pulled up, the parking lot was probably like a third full or something like that.
Like a new normal.
Yeah, and we were just wondering,
weird.
we're like, because normally when we go, you have to get there like an hour early and wait in line just to get a decent spot, so you're not over in the nosebleeds or something like that. And so him and I went early. We're like, okay, because we were planning off the pre-COVID time. And we're like, oh, we'll get there. And normally there's just a line all the way out the front, and you have to wait and go. But when we got there, I mean, you just drove all the way up and drove all the way in, and it's like, with me, I work from home, so I don't go out a ton or anything like that, and I buy everything offline except for my pants and groceries, and so it's like, to find out that something's open, somebody has to really tell me, because, since we've done nothing for 2 years, I'm still under the assumption that everything's closed, you know what I mean? Like, when my friend told me about going to the mall or something like that, and I was like, is the mall even open? She's like, yeah, they've been open for 6 months. I was like, well, how would I know?
I know.
You know what I mean?
Wow. Hey, tell us a little bit as well. You were just touching on it, but give people a sense of what you do for a living, what your job is, and especially the hours that you hold. Because what maybe many people don't know is that, like, you're a graveyard shift kind of guy.
Yep.
So you're working when they're sleeping, and you're sleeping when everybody's basically at work. Tell us what you do and what generally your hours are.
I work tech support for a web hosting company, and I work from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So every Sunday morning service is my night service.
Wow. Now, how long have you been doing a night shift kind of a job?
Well, at the job I'm at now, I've been there for 9 years this month.
9 years doing this shift?
Yep. Or 8 years in graveyard, but 9 years at the company I'm at.
My
and
goodness.
then the one I had before that, I did morning, but then the previous job was Home Depot, and I worked graveyard for a year. So
brother,
pretty much for the average of about 10, 12 years, pretty much graveyard.
So touch on that a little bit. How is that, like, quite literally sleeping in the middle of the day for essentially 9 straight years?
Mm-hmm.
That has to take a real adjustment on your end, in your living quarters and your social life and all of that. How does that work?
Well, I personally like the calmness of the night, and I've always been a night person. Like, I'm always most productive at night. Like, anytime I work on an art project or, like, in high school and stuff, I'd always start my homework late at night. And so, like, with me, I said, my dad hates when it gets dark early, like in the wintertime, whereas me, I said, because as soon as the sun gets down, my butt gets in gear, and then I start working on my projects. And so it's like with me, night is totally fine for me, and I like the calmness of it and everything like that. And one of the nice perks is you always get to see the sun come up every day. You know what I mean? And so that's always nice. Social-wise, I mean, now that we're in COVID, it really hasn't affected anything because there's nothing going on. But, I mean, a lot of the times when I do stuff with friends, we jump on and play games, and we'd always do it at nighttime. So, for the most part, it hasn't changed. But sleep-wise, I'd probably say the worst time is summertime because, obviously, the days are the longest, it's the hottest.
Right.
And
kids are outside playing.
Well, I think the gardeners, what they do is they wait till I start going to sleep, and then they start. And then what they do is they all call each other up and make sure they do their lawn mowing in sync with hours so they can get running for like 3 straight hours while I'm trying to sleep.
Oh, my brother. Well, look, man, we pray for you because I know that there are some times when you come in to early call time and you're running on some fumes, and we've talked about that, and I hope that you'll be able to get a respite from that or get some rest. Do you ever desire to not be a night owl anymore and to kind of get a job when you're going to work when other people are going to work, or you enjoy you said you enjoy the quietness of it, if you will, the peace of it, and that's just kind of how you roll.
Yeah, well, the job I have is really perfect for me because I get to work from home. It's something I like doing, and people always ask me, "Oh, you going to change or like get promoted or anything like that?" And I actually just started my art business, which was one of the blessings of COVID, helped me get back in touch with my art because I couldn't do anything else. And so I started doing my art. Like, I just opened up my Etsy store and started, actually my first couple for sale projects. And so my ideal goal would be work this job because it works so good with my schedule, and my goal would be eventually just go full-time with my art. So I really wouldn't have anything like want to shift to just like another job during the day, at least if it was something like really appealed with me. Like back in the day, I wanted to work in the game industry, and I always had a passion for it. And, it's kind of how I came up with my artist name. But the problem is with the game industry, every couple months there's some new big story coming out how the big studios are just trashing their employees, and they're just treating them bad. And even some of the ones that were looked as like treating them the best, then all these leaks about how bad they were. And I went to school for game design and everything like that, and the more I did it, I went to community college, and kind of the bad thing was they were kind of teaching back outdated technology as opposed to keeping up with the times. And I liked it, and one of the things I always questioned when I did, I said, if I did games as a passion, it's a passion of mine, but if I did a job, would I not look at the same? Because a lot of people are like, okay, well, if you love playing the guitar, but then you become a job, do you love it the same? You know what I mean? And so that's one question I always had. And after I graduated and kind of was looking around the industry, the more and more I did, I gotten this job, and it's just a perfect job for me, and it's it works with my schedule. And the thing I like best about it is I get to work from home. For me, that's one of my biggest things. That's why a lot of people ask me, our company's good at asking me, with the lockdowns and work from home, how has it changed your life? How do you feel? And everything like that. What have you had to adapt to? And my always joke, because I said I've been working from home since 2015. I didn't have to change anything.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, hey, if it works, and if you feel that that's both where your skills and your passions lie, as I kind of said at the start of the podcast, you always seem to have a sense of humor and a lightheartedness to you, and more power to you, brother. I pray that you get the appropriate sleep that you need to, and again, as the minister of music, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for our technical crew and for all that we've done together over these last couple of years. It feels like we've run a few marathons together of things that we've done, and ways in which we've had to think about, and ways in which we've had to do things, but it feels altogether different, because in many ways it is or was altogether different. And hey, you were just touching on a little bit, and that sounds like an interesting thing. For some of the folks that are watching this podcast, they totally get what you were talking about gaming and your artist and your Etsy store and your artwork and what you have going on right now and that whole kind of world. For some people that are watching, that totally went over those bald heads of you and mine. They have no idea what you're talking about. So what is that? Your artist, and the name of your artist is?
Black Fox 1985.
Okay, so what is that?
Well, basically, one of my favorite games of all time is called Metal Gear Solid, and it came out in 1997, so, I was still a kid at that time. And it's from a creator, his name is Hideo Kojima, and every game he plays, it's like most games are just for mindless fun. You just jump on a phone. But with him, everything he always does has a story, has an underlying meaning and stuff like that. Like, one of his themes in that game was, can love bloom on a battlefield? And so one of the main characters in the game is, his name is Gray Fox. And the main character you are is Solid Snake. And I just instantly had a connection with that character and the backstory and everything like that. And so as a kid, my imagination just run wild. And so the way I came to Black Fox is I basically created a sub-story within his story. Where, because the one of the main guys he's training, his name was Gray Fox. He was trained by the military, became a cyborg and everything like that. And they trained him. And basically what it was is it was a child soldier program. And so what they did is they trained all these to be soldiers. And so my kind of backstory with it as a kid is that I was a soldier trained under Gray Fox. And so instead of Gray Fox, I was Black Fox. And so that's kind of how I came from the name. And of course, back then I was... that's when Xbox Live was getting started and all the online gaming and everything like that. And of course, anyone who's ever tried to create a username or an email account or anything, I mean, you pretty much have to be intuitive these days, because anything you want has already been taken or thought of. And that's how I came up with the Black Fox 1995, just threw my name on it, or my birth year. And so that was part of my story, that I was a trained soldier starting the year of my birth, and that's how they numbered it. And so that's pretty much how I originally came up with it. And then I used it for all my gamer tags and started using it for my screen names, and just kind of, became an evolution of my artist name. And so now that's pretty much my handle.
Listen to you explain all that. is really cool, but now I feel like the old guy because that was like over my bald head, most of it too. But you know what? I mean, there's a lot of young people either in our church or another church that might be watching that's totally nodding their head, getting exactly what you're talking about in both that platform. And I know that's, any time that we have online connections with people. I mean, God can use it for good, and the devil can use it for evil. Yep. And so we always are dying to ourselves and trust that God can use all kinds of means to strengthen our walk with Him, but also to strengthen our connection with one another. And you're one of those rare guys, at least to me, that you're really into the online world, if you will, but you're also super easy to talk to and really social and really communicable, and I appreciate that. Yeah. So that's a good thing. I think people should be both and be balanced in that way.
I think the one thing that I like about online is like a podcast or an interview or something I watched, and the guy said, he said, if you think about the internet is kind of interesting because it brings out everybody's true colors. And like he said, he says, you're gonna find on the internet what you're searching for. So he's like, say for example, he's like, the people that are going to Instagram looking for a fight are gonna find it. And I really like that because it's like, like with my artist handle, that's pretty much who I came from. Like we were talking about The Matrix before. I said, in that movie, all the people had their actual name and they had their hacker name. And to all of them, they said their hacker name was truly who they were. And I know with a lot of artists and stuff like that their artist name is really who they are, and then they have the real name because they just have to have one. And I was like, that's kind of true. And so, like, going back to the interview or whatever I was watching, he was talking about, he says, the internet, people get to be who they are because, like, you're behind a keyboard or a screen or whatever. So it's like, if you come across somebody who's really toxic on there, they're truly toxic, and the internet's just multiplying it. I mean, obviously, it's like the internet can affect us different ways, but I like that he says, what you're searching for on the internet, you'll find. And I know, like, when COVID first started happening, like, I got really kind of depressed because the things I go out and do is, like, I like going to concerts and raves and stuff like that. And pretty much just in one fell swoop, all of them were gone. Yeah. And like the year previous, I'd gone to something like 23 shows for the year. And then the next year, I went to one, right before the lockdowns, and it was just done. And it's like, with working graveyard and stuff like that, that's one of the few things I did. And so it's like when the only few enjoyments I had just got cut out completely, I know it kind of hit me and I was depressed for a while. And I know when I was going on social media, I just kind of had that agitation. And like watching that interview and stuff, he's like, if you want to have a good experience on social media, go in with the mindset like that. And so I was like, I really thought about that. So whenever I go on social media and someone like says a negative comment to me or something like that, your instant reaction is just want to fire right back at them. And so when people do that, I'm like, okay, when someone hits that negativity, I just flip with the positivity. Or, if so, because you always get people to come on like your art or something like that and just say something just to agitate you. You know what I mean? Like if somebody comes on and says, hey, your art's ugly, you should give up. Like what I'll do is to those people, I'll go back and be like, oh, well, thanks for the feedback. We're always trying to improve. Because they want that conflict. And if you don't give it, they can't affect you. Like the old saying is, it takes two people to fight. Yeah. And you figure it's all about giving that return.
Or as it says in Scripture, a gentle answer turns away wrath. Yep. So, well, good on you, Ryan. Look, I knew, man, that I knew in this conversation there's going to be some things that you were going to tell me and I was going to learn from you that probably went over my head. But clearly, technology is in your bones. And so I'm grateful for you as being a part of our team and our technical ministries. And we're just going to wrap up. I knew this was going to be like a snowball going down the hill. All I just need to do is nudge it, and it would just go with you. So this half an hour has flown by. So just one more question, and then we'll wrap it up here. And that is, I would imagine that you'd have to drink some kind of coffee or something to keep you awake. So we are asking all guests what their favorite coffee drink is. Do you have one?
My favorite coffee is Laffy Man Colombian Hula.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's actually the coffee by Hugh Jackman. He started a coffee company and gives all the proceeds to them. And so he has 3 different versions. And mine is the dark roast, and it's
so
really good.
Cool. Well, one thing I'm doing that we're hoping to release, and we'll probably put it out on the socials, or for those that have been watching Beyond Sunday, is that I'm going to go to all the episodes and get that last clip and find out what everybody's drink order was for the 16 episodes, and then just send it out to all the guests and anybody who knows. And that might just be my new Starbucks thing. I'm gonna get a Ryan today. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get it, and that'll be cool to do. So, yeah. Well, hey Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today, and thanks so much for the conversation, and thank you for watching us for this episode of Beyond Sunday. My name is Tom Grossi, and I encourage you to go back to past episodes and to watch and get to know members of our technical and our music ministry, our worship ministry team here at Kindred. And you can find us on YouTube if you search for Kindred Church Anaheim Hills. You could also just go to our church website, www.kindredchurch.org. Go under the Resources tab and subscribe to Beyond Sunday Videocast, and you'll get updates through your podcasting app as well as be able to see past episodes. Once again, my name is Tom Grossi, the host of Beyond Sunday. It's a joy to have you with us. God bless and have a great week.
Thanks for joining this episode of Beyond Sunday, brought to you by Kindred Church. For updates and new episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills, or join us on Facebook or on our website at www.kindredchurch.org.